All right, we are going to call the meeting to order. This is the Conservation Commission meeting, January 17th, 2024. Just seems like yesterday is 2023. As a reminder, open session public meetings are subject to being recorded. Your image and voice will be recorded should you choose to participate. Just a couple of housekeeping things before we get to our main presentation this evening. Minutes, there were minutes, right? Yeah.
Yep.
Yes, I did see them. I would, does anybody have any comments or questions, changes about the minutes? Hearing none, I will ask for a motion to approve the minutes of the prior meeting.
So move. Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll ask you to vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Excellent, we have minutes. I think we will skip the treasurer's report for this evening. Bills and forms. No bills and forms. Okay. All right, no bills and forms, emails and notices.
Been pretty quiet.
Yeah, we got an NOI submission for our next meeting.
Yep.
Yes. And other than that, that's it.
Yeah.
And that's actually for the bridge on South Street. Yay. Nothing for Maplewood Farms, Highland Ridge, Pat's last two reports. We had a foot of snow and then 2 inches of rain. There definitely was some silt fence that got overtaken and had to be repaired. They did that in a very timely fashion. And Pat went back out and inspected and all looked good. I know everything wasn't good at the site, but from the wetlands point of view, we were all set. And then the only thing we have to do is to vote on the forest stewardship plan.
Yep, and just sign off on the stewardship plan. Did everyone have a chance to go
Yes.
through and review it?
Yeah, that's good.
Awesome.
Excellent. Yes, very excited.
Yes.
Yeah. Does anybody have any further comments? Hearing none, I'll accept the
Oh,
motion.
I'm sorry. I was looking for my notes.
Okay,
One thing is, there was no mention of I walked through there and there was some trash. But I don't recall seeing that in the report. Would that be, I'm sorry, would that be something we'd want to remove? I mean, it's just old stuff. And I didn't know quite how to address that, so. I'm just asking. We don't have to include it in this report, but it may be something we look at.
Yeah, it's definitely something worth looking into.
Mhm.
I know SVT usually goes out once a year and checks, assuming it's on acres part of it. Because they do check certain parts that are part of conservation restriction, but if it's not on the acre part,
It's not.
SVT wouldn't see it,
Yeah,
so,
it's not.
okay.
okay.
It's
We can definitely look into that and take care of that ourselves, though.
Mhm.
We do have a commission member who is joining us by Zoom tonight. And Louise has her hand up. Louise, if you can unmute, there you go. Go ahead.
What do we hear?
I know.
Because our volume's gonna be off, right?
That's a good question.
This is crazy.
She's not muted, but we are.
He's a committee member, you go ahead and move for the panel.
Okay. Oop. Oh, there we go. Yeah, no, there we go.
Who's that?
I don't even know. Oh my God, whatever.
You added him as a fan.
Sorry for our technical difficulties. This is our first hybrid meeting. Go ahead, Louise.
You're here in the other room.
Someone, they can't come back in, you put them back to attendee.
Did I remove her?
No, the Adam person?
Oh,
you want
yeah.
Them as a panelist?
No, I'm trying to get Louise. And
But
Louise,
is
I
this
can't,
Adam person, someone you want as a panelist, then
no.
you need to put them back down to attendee.
right,
So click on those little buttons
yeah.
and change. You can do it. Oh, you better hope it's somebody you know. Yes, so
Right. Adam, if I lose you, log back in.
Okay,
if you remove him, they cannot rejoin.
Next time.
All right, how come I can't hear Louise?
She's talking,
Louise?
or her microphone's muted.
No? No,
Let's
well,
see. Now it's.
right. Louise, can you say something?
yes, I'm listed as a panelist
Your laptop.
along with Town of Berlin, Craig, and Berlin
Speaker's
Cable.
up to 100%.
Now ask Louise to speak.
Oh. Louise?
I'm here.
Okay. Your comments, please. Are the microphones picking it up?
They are going to. Mute that again.
Okay,
Still having technical difficulties.
yeah. All right, well, I can see me on the screen. Just above Craig's
You guys all speak down.
screen that he's sharing.
Right. Do you have a comment about the stewardship plan?
I agree that it's a good plan and we should follow through. Yes,
Okay.
definitely.
Awesome. Thank you. No one.
I think it's spelled. Do I unplug this thing and just leave it?
I didn't say we were ready for prime time. I just said the room was ready.
I'm patient.
All right. I can still hear a little feedback, but so
I'm still getting,
a little bit.
yeah. Right.
Yeah. Okay, would someone like to make a motion to accept the forest stewardship plan and bird assessment?
Yes, I would like to do that.
Second.
There we go.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll ask you to vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed? All right, excellent. We
Oh,
just have to sign
yeah.
it.
Yep. I think we're standing under owners.
Yeah.
Yep.
push them. Yeah.
And we just have to sign off on transferring the DCR, the grant over to Forrester. Well, which is just like right there, section there.
And is that me or is that Kristen?
Maybe it might be.
Oh.
Let's wait.
Yeah.
And
But-
if you need it to be me,
Okay.
just let me know, but
Yep.
if not, because
Yeah.
it says municipality.
Yep.
That's not really.
Yep.
All right. We're good?
Yep.
All right. I think that's everything on the agenda except for now Craig. So just as an introduction, Craig Della Penna is here this evening to do to give us a presentation about the 40-year history of the the Mass Central Rail Trail. Kind of where it's been, where we are now, and where it's going.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you for joining us, Craig.
Thank you. I've been looking forward to it. When was the first time we met? It was 2004. Almost 20 years here. I've been waiting for this. There's been a lot going on here. Welcome. Thank you for having me. It's a 40-year journey to create the longest rail to trail project in New England from one dead railroad. That's our new logo. We had been using the old Wachusett Greenways 1990 logo, which shows what the heck a rail trail is. People know what a rail trail is today. They don't know it's how long this is. We found that out in the summer of 2022, when we were conducting a report. We hired a consultant to do a report about this, see if it could actually be reassembled, or actually to see what it would be worth. What it would be worth if it was actually completed. So we have this new logo here. We're going to be unveiling Friday at Stockbridge. We're building a Mass Central Rail Trail Coalition across the state to get this finished. We connect the dots for you today. The job said you cannot connect the dots by looking forward. You can only connect the dots by looking backward. Go to each one of these important slides. URL code. This is going to be recorded so you can go and see where these links go. But this is actually part of the Mass Central Rail Trail website. It shows this interesting oddity. There's 6 steps, starting when Walter was a state rep. When there was a war on a rail trail in Cape Cod and Fallon, Woods Hole. And it was the first place in the United States where the SJC ruled that the municipality could reassemble dead railroad into a linear park using eminent domain. 50 years later, it's still largely unknown. But that so angered the state government that a municipality could do that 2 things happened. One's in the state legislature where Walter used to be. They created 2 laws that said the state has to have a right of first refusal on sale of corridor from a railroad to whoever wants to buy it. And this now is a right of first refusal for the state, and you can't build on top of it or next to it without approval from Secretary of Transportation. 2 obscure laws that were so early in their buildup that was before any environmental agencies were around. So that office lives inside a DOT, and they're considered to be the redheaded stepchild inside DOT. They don't have any inkling of preserving or protecting anything. But here we have, within 150 miles of my house in Northampton, Massachusetts, lies the densest network of former steam railroad corridor in North America. And is protected now. Largest landowner in Massachusetts is EEA. Second largest landowner is the MBTA. What do they own? They own mostly dead railroad because of what happened in the state legislature. The legislature preserves corridor by those two laws, but the Transportation Secretariat got fed up, and they, at the same time, they bought all the live railroads and dead railroads within 495 in 4 transactions in the 1970s. This all lays out on here. I have the corridor here, all the deed structure on this infographic that shows step by step by step how this corridor is being preserved and protected, and how we came to end up with all these dead railroads in Massachusetts. That if they're owned by the MBTA, they typically still have the rail in them. 45 years later, the forest is growing up. How's it, by the way, you're so familiar with those forlorn dead railroads in your neighborhoods here. That is not normal. That impacts your life because you haven't fixed it up yet, but it's closer. We're going to go through the years in separate time frames. We're going to talk about the disappointing years, the regroup and recovery years, the tipping point years, the breakthrough. How the idea of a 104-mile-long rail trail came to be. This is the high watermark of railroad construction, for showing the B&M Railroad in red, the competitor New York Central, and New Haven Railroad in the bold black line. This is the densest network of dead steam rail. 70% of what you're looking at here is gone as an operational railroad. And actually, in my past life, I used to market rail freight. I used to plan to start up and manage the operations of 7 large transloading facilities. So I know how to make a railroad work. And I've written 3 books on the effects when you convert the dead railroad into a linear park. It improves communities, improves real estate values. Here's the timeline. In 1980, when the state government was buying inside 495, everything that was available, both live railroads and former railroads, they weren't paying too much about the rest of the state. And you, interestingly, Berlin, Massachusetts, as opposed to Berlin, Germany. During the Cold War, those of you old enough to remember that Berlin, Germany was the center of gravity for everything. You are the center of gravity for the transition between MBTA-owned corridor to the east, and from here west, it's the Wild West. It's the Wild West. I buy corridor on occasion and block sales to adjoining landowners on it, places where that will be impactful. But in 1980, and this was actually when they consummated the deal, they bought the 10 most westernmost miles of this corridor, and they called it the Neurotic Rail Trail. That took 5 years of negotiations, and then they bought it in 1980. It took 13 years to build it out, but we'll talk about that in a second. The Fisk family in 1988 walked from Northampton to Boston's North Station on this corridor. And they wrote a never published manuscript that was given to me by one of the top officials inside DEM at the time. And it's kind of a cute little thing. And it's an antique topo map with some narration on a facing page, talked about all the things that came along the way. And when I was given that, I was actually put it out on the internet looking for that family, and the son came about, said, I don't want that on the internet. So it's not on the internet anymore, but if somebody really likes it, I've got a better one here now. Okay. 93, the Neurotic Rail Trail, that's spelled Neurotic Rail Trail. And in 1995, the little logo on the left down there, that's the Wachusett Greenways logo about the Mass Central Rail Trail. And they purposely built out their section of the trail as stone dust. Low impact, a lot of volunteers, easy to build, not complicated DOT, like minutia, Byzantine process. This is very simple. There's a funding program in the DCR that called the Rec Trail Program that facilitates that. And there's still They started in 1995. They've got 20 to the 30 miles open, inch by inch, inch by inch. No drama, no high pollutant problems. Very simple. As they said, avoided DOT type projects take a long time, volunteer based, shorter segments, maybe 100 years, 100 yards 1 year, maybe a bridge another year. 1995, the Wayside Trail project became talked about, and Belchertown. And that's when DCR changed. GCR used to be a robust agency. The Parks and Rec, the Parks side of DCR. But today we rank 48 or 50 out of 50 states in our investments in DCR through park funding. It is not good. It is not good. DCR doesn't have the capacity to do the Nawatic Rail Trail today if they chose to do it. The section, the Wayside section here is underway, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. This is the disappointing years, both the Wayside Trail, 5 of the 6 communities on the Wayside Trail voted yay, including Berlin. Weston voted it down. The project never really moved forward. Belchertown was voted down. The notable thing about Belchertown, that was when I first transitioned out of the railroad industry and into the rail trail building industry. I went in and created a friends group in Belchertown in 1995. And within 4 months, we had 800 members strong, but it lost at town meeting by a sliver. Both were voted down. Didn't mean things stopped. And actual Weston was very notable nationwide as picked up by newspapers all across the country. I've got all these newspapers linked here, including the Commonwealth Magazine. Commonwealth Magazine is how everything in Massachusetts moves forward. Stories in there get picked up and they get moved forward. If it doesn't appear in the Commonwealth Magazine, things don't generally move forward here. If you didn't know that, you learned something new tonight. This is Los Angeles Times picked up this story about Weston. More stories. These are all online. In 1999, DEM, as they used to be called, Department of Environmental Management, now DCR, released a report calling for more trail projects, encouraging piecing together the Mass Central Rail Trail. This is the first time a 100-mile cross-state trail became talked about at such a high level. That report is online too. And the recruitment cover years in that report, it describes all the things that we ought to be doing, given the length of this proposed cross-state trail and the complexity of issues surrounding the funding of such an endeavor. It is critical to remain focused and provide support and encouragement for the many organizations and efforts forging the way for this trail. Make it a priority, and it has been made a priority today. In 1999, Wachusett Greenways held the first Golden Spike event in West Boylston, where Congressman Jim McGovern spoke enthusiastically for this statewide idea. Our 9th Golden Spike was just a few weeks ago in mid-October in Natick, not on the corridor, but I wanted to be in Natick to be close into Metro West. And so that was successful. The largest one ever was in Waltham with over 400 people attending, including the gubernatorial candidates of the year that Mitt Romney won the election. But what is the Nawatic Network? That's my title here. I'm the president of the Nawatic Network. And that started during the Clinton administration when there was the Federal Highway Administration commanded all states to have a millennial trail. And so there were 2 entries in Massachusetts. The one that won was called Nawatic Network. And they called me and said, we won, but we don't know what we have to do. And so you're going to have to have a 501c3 to get the $10,000 gift from American Express. And you have to form a board of directors. And so I came on that board years and years ago. And they called me recently in 2019 and said they were tired. They've set out everything they set out to do is done. And they wanted to turn back in the 501c3 status. I said, no, We will expand the board, we'll expand the mission, not just to be the 10 miles of the western end of this corridor. We'll use this vehicle to reassemble the rest of the corridor. So that's how Neurotic Network came to be. Here's the little plaque from the year 2000. It's a national partnership dedicated to building and sustaining a network of trails connecting people to their land, their history, and their culture. Easy peasy, right? It's our new logo, the big 1,400-foot bridge over the Connecticut River. Longest crossing of railroad over the Connecticut River. This is a notable picture here. This is the regroup and recover years. This shows the lead investigator from the State Senate Post Audit and Oversight Committee in 1999, the guy on the right. You see, Mass DOT was the only DOT had to pave. If you were using federal dollars to build a trail, you had to pave. So we needed to change that because that launched about 8 wars where people did not want to see paving. They wanted to see a soft surface. Equestrians were always opposed to paving. And so we changed that. We brought the Office of Architectural Review Board out on a trip on the Wachusett Greenway section in nearby Oakdale. They let them experience soft surface trail in their wheelchairs. And they said, this is fine. And so a letter was written, went to DOT, Mass Highway as they used to be called. Last DOT in the United States, by the way, they have the word highway instead of a Department of Transportation. Makes a difference, believe me, changes the culture. But the tiller was thrown over. And they came around and they actually redid their entire design guidebook. And chapter 11, which is on one of these slides, it gives a link to that. Chapter 11 shows how you can build a soft surface trail if your community wants that. You don't have to have asphalt. There's chapter 11. This is shared use paths, SUPs, shared use path jargon, and greenways. Belchertown Land Trust was formed after the ashes of the negative vote in Belchertown. Negative votes, by the way, in town, Massachusetts, if you don't get the 2/3 majority, you don't do anything. Most towns have 2/3 majority, so nothing changes, either for the good or for the bad. Nothing changes. They lost by a sliver. But does that mean they went crying away? At the time of the vote, there was no ownership of the corridor in public ownership. They created a linear thinking land trusts. Did you know that there are more land trusts in Massachusetts than anywhere else in the United States, except for California, which is 20 times larger? And so Belchertown built a linear thinking land trust because they went to the conventional land trusts that were operating there and they all said, oh no, that's radioactive. That's too scary for us. We can't take that on. And so Dan Fitzpatrick, who will be at the event on Friday, very elderly now, and he will be there and he'll talk a little bit about on his table about how they built a linear thinking land trust. And they acquired, there's 9.5 miles of the corridor. The longest stretch of this corridor is in Belchertown. 7.5 miles is now donated by the land trust to the community. We can reassemble this, no problem. Central Highlands Conservancy. When I was watching in the background, we don't have any kids or dote over. I'm not old enough to golf, and so I go and make trouble. And I was watching. DOT was not really taking care of this corridor, not protecting them as they don't have anything in their DNA to protect anything. They're not EEA, which protects our environmental resources. DOTs do not protect environmental resources. So that little office inside DOT needs to be pulled out of there. And here's what I did. When I saw them sell a part of the corridor to a guy who was a high school principal in the neighboring community to him, so he could block the future trail of kids walking or biking to school. I said, time's up. I formed an LLC we went in and bought the corridor ourselves, me and my wife. And then I met my new neighbors who were frothing at the mouth angry. I bought it. I bought it including 3 bridges over water. Don't you worry about falling off your bridges? No. And I sold it to the East Quabbin Land Trust for my cost plus expense. We did high profile to make DOT look bad. How dare they allow our cultural heritage to be erased right before your eyes? But that was when DOT was actually a 20th century organization. They're definitely now a 21st century organization. And they would not allow this to happen again. The land trust bought it out for my cost plus expenses. Didn't make any money on it. I just had fun meeting my new neighbors. And that's now part of the corridor. It is open. My bridges are all renovated. They're all restored. They're buying more corridor. We're probably going to get to Yes to buy an airport that was built on this corridor in Central Mass. You probably never heard of it. They every year they have East Quabbin Land Trust has a nice event. First of the year, hiking on the trail. It's more popular every year. The guy in the foreground with the blue cap and red coat on is a former state senator. You probably remember him, Walter. Those are my bridges. Matter of fact, the lower left one is the last of its type still standing in southern New England. That would have been scrapped out, much like your stuff got scrapped out. Just it wouldn't have happened today. If that railroad was active and then the railroad goes away, all the bridges would be intact. They wouldn't have been scrapped out. Back then, in the 60s or early 70s, no one really knew what this could be used for. And this, I was biking across the state in 2006 with a travel writer from the New York Times. And it came upon a theft of the corridor. Don't forget, I used to be an organizer, lobbyist for Rails to Trails, and I borrow my way in and I make change and prevent bad things from happening. And I had dinner appointment with luncheon appointment with the head of the MBTA's privatized real estate department. And they made an agreement with me, almost signed in blood, that they would never, ever, ever, or ever, with an Eastern Mass accent, allow for the sale of corridor, across the corridor to create a flag lot. And here we go. 30-foot section of track stripped out of the way, cut out with a cutout saw, dragged out of the way, the berm bulldozed out. I took pictures of this. Can't say it was illegal. It was just them thinking I wasn't paying attention. Well, I pay attention. Every bit of this corridor, most corridors in the state, I know what's going on. So that was removed out. Matter of fact, it was probably 2010. I had my own real estate practice set up by then. I got a call from the first owner of that house. How come it's taking so long to build out the trail? I said, I'm not involved right now. I'm having fun with my own real estate practice, but I'll be back. And I am back. And I've been called last year, 5 different parties here in Berlin. How come it's taking so long to build out this trail? These are mostly people who bought next to the corridor, and that was the reason they wanted to be here on the front end of the corridor getting transformed. In any case, that's there, and no big deal. But the MBTA, they let off a lease right after that. When I told them they need to get out of town and lease the entire corridor to DCR because they couldn't defend it, they did. They let off a lease to DCR 2 months later. It took DCR 4 years to sign it because it treated the DCR, another state agency, like a municipality. And if you don't think there's a difference between state agencies and municipalities, you're not paying attention. It took DCR 4 years to sign that lease. And it was only by a fluke when the DCR commissioner was leaving, he was being elevated up to become the head of EEA. Last day on the job as the commissioner, he signs it, goes upstairs, gets it inbound as the EEA secretary. You see, the lawyers at DCR did not want him to sign it because it treated DCR like a lowly municipality. Here we are, more behind the scenes stuff that takes down impediments inch by inch by inch to build out this complicated thing. The railway trail, that is a dual use corridor. There are 400 such places in the United States now. This was in 2013 that DOT allowed for that. They were going to make it expedited to do railway trails. In 2017, I was involved in 4 wars in Eastern Mass. And my battle-hardened veterans, pro-trail forces were getting burned out, exasperated, too stressful. I said, you can't stop. You can't give up. It's only because you don't know what's going on a couple of towns away. There's a lot of good news that nobody knows about. It's a very obscure subject. So I hired an assistant, and together we run a Google search every day of every story in every newspaper in the United States or beyond that has stories about rails to trails, rail trails, bike paths, bikeways, greenways. Once a month, I pull it together, the most interesting ones under headings. The green area is going to be about the Central Rail Trail. The white are about generic trails around the state or within 150 miles of my house. And then the orange ones are high altitude stories that you may not know of, but they may be from Europe. But that is very, very impactful. Constant Contact, which hosted, it's now in the top of all their e-newsletters worldwide. When people get this, it's like sharks attacking calm in the ocean. That's just, they love this. I couldn't begin to put this down. This has kept the pro-trail forces involved. There's not really many wars anymore. Mostly, this was a newfangled idea. It's not a newfangled idea anymore. And there's lots of data suggesting that this is a great thing, but there's still things aren't moving as fast here in Massachusetts as they would in other places. Tipping point years, 2017, Wachusett Greenways opened their section. Belchertown Land Trust donated 7.5 miles to the town of Belchertown. It's now getting grants through the Mass Trails program, and they're getting things moving forward. Creation of the Mass Trails team, that was in 2018, I believe. That was very impactful, believe me. And when Charlie Baker set that up, he took mid-level staffers, commanded them to meet in his suite of offices twice a month. He wanted the silos taken down between agencies, and he succeeded because we see a huge acceleration of trail development in Massachusetts now. Not as fast as other places, but it's much faster than it had been. Weston and Wayland are built out. Yes, Weston voted it down. How did that happen? Well, when the MBTA, after covered the theft of the corridor here in Berlin, the MBTA lead DR, who then sent off a front man to go to all the communities of the select board and say, we're going to build it out as a trail. Weston, we know you voted it down. We'll build you last. But then Eversource came out and said that they wanted to do a big grid restoration resilience project, more robustness grid. And they said in Wayland and Weston, we don't have to, those are relatively new towers, but we're going to build it out. We're going to put a road in and then take out the track, put in the road, and DCR can come back and build out the trail. And this is the ribbon cutting. And that's Larry Kiernan in the blue jacket, kind of faded there. He's the leader of the wayside section of the trail. Town of Clinton, 2020, 1,000-foot tunnel. Now owned by the town of Clinton and the Linear Thinking Land Trust in Clinton. This will be restored. There's several iconic infrastructure things on this corridor. 3 big bridges missing, like your Five Corners area, the tunnel in Clinton, the bridge over the Wachusett Reservoir at Wachusett Reservoir, Nashua River, that's got to be restored, and a long bridge between Bondsville and Belchertown. Here's a concise infographic about much of what we're talked about here in a sort of 2-pager format. In 2 years, we're going to be at 75 miles open. We're currently at 60 miles. About a year ago, we're at 53 miles. There's 12 more miles under construction right now. In 2 years, we're going to be at 75 miles, but getting completion, that's the big thing. So during the pandemic, DOT commissioned a report, a granular, on the ground, detailed report. Could this? It turns out, yes. It will be complicated, i.e. jargon for expensive, but it is very detailed. And when they told me what it was showing, I said, well, what's next? And he said, well, we need to know what if it's going to cost $100 million. We didn't know, what is it going to be worth? We can't spend money like that. And we're not doing a report like that. We want you to do that. And so we commissioned an RFP to find a consultant who could write a highly credentialed report, because this is some little frivolous little thing. This is in the densest network of steam railroad corridor in North America. And it connects communities, doesn't avoid communities, it connects communities. And it changes places for the better. And in my real estate practice, that's what I specialize in, is selling houses near rail trails. I'm the first realtor in that regard, and have proven that it's a benefit to have a trail near your house. So this study came out, and then we put out an RFP, the request for proposals, to answer that elephant in the room question that had never, ever been asked in New England. What would that 100-mile trail be worth to the communities in the state? And this intersects with 18 other long dead railroads that are being to linear parks, some of which are open already. So we hired Kittleson and Associates out of Boston, and that's the report. This has been in papers all over New England. It's a big deal. It's a 1-page executive summary on that link too. This is a little bit, we're spring of 2023, we're a little bit out of date here, but at that time it was 55 miles open, we're 60 miles open now. It'll bring 4 to 5 million users a year. Just in Worcester County, 960,000 people over the course of a year. 64% of the state's population lives within 10 miles. There'll be 400,000 to 500,000 overnight visitors. One of the things we do, we live 8 feet from one of the earliest built municipal rail trails. So I don't just talk the talk here. And we operate a bed and breakfast there. I expect I'm going to be called in to develop a webinar for people in Worcester County who want to be able to have a bed and breakfast to make some extra income for themselves. But what is really next here? That's the old logo. This is what our new logo looks like, at least a rough draft of one. It's going to show what it is. This is the trail coming across the state. We have a new letterhead. And some of the things we're going to be doing here as I come up to the end is to do historic call-outs, because I have a background in railroad history, and that's where it all started for me. My books were all highly detailed in terms of everything you were going to find along the way in terms of historic railroad infrastructure or archaeology, why the railroad was there, why it went away. And so what we're going to do is have a QR code display or restore the mile markers. My treasurer for Neurotic Network was Tom Kelleher, who lived nearby in Acton. And he was the guy leading the effort on restoring all the mile markers on this corridor. So this map is his old map, and he's actually passed away. And he died with such a surprise that all of his resources are lost now. But this is in Clinton. My friend Franny Hodge for many years. But we're going to do QR code displays. And that's the modern way to describe things. You shine your smartphone on it, takes you to a website, it sticks in your phone, you can go home and look at it later. But our Nautic Network site is really robust and has the capacity of probably over 150 to 250 more pages on it that could be. And so we're going to have a way for families to come across the state and have a fun multi-day journey to learn about all the forgotten places along this corridor. Berlin's pretty well known, but other places are pretty obscure. They're not well known, but there was a lot of history on this line that will get called out here. We'll be working with the B&M Railroad Historical Society, Mass Historic Commission, Preservation Mass. In fact, I did a Preservation Mass lecture that was an adaptation of this, more historic, this past summer, local historics, everything, historic commissions. So this is, we're going to be the longest, most comprehensive series of QR codes on a rail trail in the United States. Gotta think big. Gotta think big. Thank you. The end.
Okay.
Any questions, or you just move on to the next thing?
No, we can definitely, any questions from anyone in the room first?
Who would pay for the bridges? That would be a combination of federal, state, and private foundation money. We can raise money in places that are fragile. The places that are not yet built out on this are not going to be Weston and Wayland, and you know, the fragile places need help. They wouldn't expect a municipality at any level to do this, because this is so important. It can't be left to the municipal level. It has to be higher altitude funded. And by the way, your website here about this trail is incorrect. Coburn Road is not the western end of this project, or western end of DCR or MBTA owned. The MBTA owns all the way to the abutment where the new cul-de-sac was put in with a secret protocol of canvassing. I could go on. There's a lot that people don't know about here. But this, you should update the site to show that, in fact, that driveway has a deed restriction, an easement for the trail. So nobody should be surprised that one day the trail is going to go across there, 5 corners again. It won't be a big, ugly, robust railroad bridge. It'll be a lighter duty bike ped bridge, more affordable.
Did you say they were gonna re-bridge the Nashua Gorge?
Walter, if you can talk into the microphone.
No. Did I hear you say they'll re-bridge the Nashua Gorge over there?
By Wachusett Reservoir?
Yeah.
Well, there's 2 ways to get across there, Walter. We're not sure which way will be workable. Could be across the top of the dam.
Yeah, okay.
Even though they're really not in favor of it right now, but things evolve, and that would be an easier to do thing than rebuilding that long bridge, certainly.
Yep.
But we'll see. I'm patient.
What do you think would be possibility of 5 corners up here getting over that for bridge?
That would be doable. There's actually a new bridge contractor approved by Mass DOT that takes big, robust, big chunks of steel, like up to 95 feet long, and they press them into the shape of a U with a little flange on top that makes it.
Seen it?
And those are much cheaper. And I know that talking over dinner tonight with my friends that I think the 5 corners area, those were relatively short bridges, intervals. They were like 70 feet long, perhaps. And the B&M Railroad was just swallowed up by CSX. And there are several pieces of the railroad, of the B&M ownership, that are now being headquartered in Jacksonville, Florida, for the real estate department. And I've been in contact with them because there's lots of pieces to be reassembled here. That not just Berlin, but many communities that were B&M served, like outside of Winchendon, Belchertown, places, northern Berkshire County. There's places all over B&M Railroad, stray pieces that need to be factored in and reassembled, part of the core.
Just one other thing, there are, as you know, some lands are sold off privately before the state got its act together. There was a piece of land in Berlin sold off, which I helped sell to the people, get it passed, that be kind of critical. Do they use eminent domain anymore on these things?
Sometimes,
Okay. that's all I
sometimes,
want.
but doesn't have to be, you know. I have done sales where have moved away and we send someone to buy the house. The dead railroad is attached to the deed of the house. And we just buy the house, carve off the dead railroad on the backside, do some improvements to the house, and make it easier to sell. And we can, there's all sorts of ways. And it is an attractive thing to have the dead railroad converted to a linear park behind your house. And don't forget, the MBTA generally has the rails in place. Reason you have it Coburn Road as the end, because it doesn't look like on the west side of Coburn Road, doesn't look like MBTA owned property. The MBTA will always have the rails there. Very unusual to have it no rails. I think the rails were stolen. The MBTA owned it, and I can't believe they would never have sold the track. So it had to be stolen. That's why it just looks different. So it doesn't look like MBTA owned. It looked like it was B&M owned, but it was wrong. It was everything was owned by MBTA all the way to the abutment.
The only other thing, how are the requirements on the design of it? That is, some people are concerned about the intrusiveness of it, this business, it can be a soft trail, doesn't have to be paved. How wide does it have to be? And
I'd say 8 to 10 feet. 10 feet definitely for a paved trail. That's the minimum standard, because if there are rollerbladers in the mix, they'll have a 6-foot wingspan, let's say, and a bicyclist needs 4 feet to be comfortable. So you need a minimum of 10 feet. Less so on the soft surface trail. Soft surface trails are done all over the United States. And, the fast bicyclists would prefer asphalt. But it would be better for many rural or suburban communities to do what they want to do.
I think we would probably, yeah.
So. Caleb.
Oh, use the microphone.
So one question I had is, I see on a lot of these trails, when they get close to houses, there's fencing, for privacy. Now, is that always just the residence fence, or is there ever on the state-owned land or anything like that, fencing to kind of help with some of these privacy concerns?
Yes, you can factor that into the design of your trail to have a fence for adjoining landowners that need to have more privacy than the trail would provide. I think what I've seen, generally speaking, is the first time the fence is built, that will be part of the project cost. The maintenance of the fence, replacement of the fence over time would be onto the homeowner. And I would also stress that the fence be put on the boundary of the public owned corridor, not merely on the edge of the trail, but where the actual boundary line between the private owner and the publicly owned property is. Usually the corridor is 66 feet wide. It's a rule of thumb. Some places narrower, like by my house, it's only 20 feet wide. But wherever you should make the boundary, that's where the fence has got to go.
Actually, in response to that, I think we have, the place where my property abuts the trail is certainly like this, where the trail is way up there. It's pretty steep, kind of down there. So I imagine where the rail trail or the railroad property ends, a fence wouldn't really be,
I'll say where you would want to have a fence would actually to provide screening because the elevated section by your house. You couldn't have the fence way down below. 'Cause that would not screen anything.
right, so I'm,
I think an accommodation. could be
okay,
made.
all right, I mean, I'm not trying to speak just for my own,
Right.
but I just mean in general, there are
Mhm.
some kind of weird exceptions
Sure.
in Berlin.
Nothing is exact, everything is a little different. Every community is a little different.
Well, I think the important thing is set up a calendar and the steps. I mean, where are we at this point? Step one in Berlin, then step two and funding, and what does the time frame look like, timeline look like?
I would say be patient. Don't just try to hurry it up, get it out the door to make it on the next town meeting. Well, it could be, I think, Walter, to be truthful and honest, I've resurrected every project that was voted down in southern New England or Massachusetts. And it's different. Each one is a little different. The one that really I think would work here was to have a robust friends group that meets monthly, just like what happened at the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail. Monthly meetings in a public place, whether that means 19 Carter, the beautiful place 19 Carter, is a monthly meeting there or wherever. Bring in speakers from places that look like Berlin, that got their trail built. And it's not going to be in a big city or someplace different than Berlin. Bring in speakers. And I've got names of 5,000 people in the database. I can give you, I've been doing this for almost 30 years. And so I'm like the Rain Man of rail trails. And I have all these people in my database. They will come here and speak and teach you about different aspects. You don't have to be flying this alone. I will put it into my e-newsletter, your updated meetings, bring people in to talk about, have a bona fide board meeting. If you need a 501c3 status, the Water Network can probably take care of that, where we charge you minimal to just create a friends group that has a 501c3 status. So you could raise money from local foundations or donations. We can provide some technical expertise in that realm. But don't try to just get at the town meeting and quickly. Go slow, go methodical. Second Wednesday of the month, whenever you meet, that'll be like clockwork. That's how Southampton was resurrected. Southampton, the only community on the entire long trail from New Haven to Northampton, the longest interstate trail in the Northeast. They voted it down in '96. I went back in 2006 and resurrected the project. They got to yes 4 years later in 2010. And they just bought the corridor at the end of 2022. So things move slow, but that is now under development and it will be built.
Well, what is the real relationship then between the state, the MBTA, the towns? I know we'd have to vote. The state won't probably move if the town doesn't vote for it, but the state owns it.
That's right.
And the state could build a trail.
They never voted again in Weston.
And, a few years back, as you know, there was a group of people put together and there was someone willing for the rails to take the rails,
Yeah, they're out of
pick up
business.
all the thing, clean it all up and make the trail.
Yeah, that company's out of business.
I know
because
it
the
is now.
metrics of the
It's a
cost of
little
the
late. Yeah,
Waste rail is
Yeah.
not high enough to sustain that.
yeah.
But you can do this. And I like the idea of Coburn Road as being phase one, because it ends at a public road. I don't like the idea of going out all the way to the abutment because you don't have a plan on the bridge yet. That'll come as things happen. It will happen. These are the only projects that DOT can build out that hundreds, if not thousands of people will show up at a ribbon cutting. They're so well loved that it'll become the most loved place in the community, hands down. It'll become the third place. That's the problem in the United States, the lack of a third place. The first place is your family. The second place is your workplace. The third place is what is missing. 19 Carter is a beautiful third place here in Berlin, a place where you meet people outside of the first two places in your life. But this is what's needed in a lot of places to bring normalcy back to, you know, bedroom communities in the real estate world. Bedroom communities are really not good. All they do is they're just valuable places to sleep. They don't have a lot of third place opportunities. The trail will bring the third place opportunity to the community. That's what it's all about here, is build robust places where young people can afford to buy houses and maybe set up their startup businesses and on and on. I've been to hundreds and hundreds of places like this, and it creates a renaissance. We in Southern New England were one of the last in the United States to build out these things. The Cape Cod was the first place, really, but that's a touristy place, and it's not really a normal place. Places like Berlin, Hudson, places that are old industrial centers, gateway cities. Our report calls out, the first time in a publication, calls out the idea of gateway towns, places that are forlorn and forgotten, and they don't have the gateway city caucus like they do in the cities, in the State House, to get funding and for improvements. But this is going to lead to this. These gateway towns is a concept that is needed to restore normalcy in these places. So, build the friends group, have regular meetings, put it in your local newspaper, Facebook, even though I'm not on Facebook anymore too often, but put it out there. Get the word out. Bring in speakers, let the people talk about how they're afraid of it perhaps or not, or people. I've been contacted by 5 landowners who moved to Berlin asking why it takes so long. Well, I said, don't worry, it'll come. Takes the time. Things move slower. It'll happen. But I'm out in the field. So it's important to do. I'm so glad to come. I've been looking forward to this for years, literally years, to come here. And then you're coming to our event on the 19th. And it's going to be, what's needed here is to build a coalition across the state to get the state to commit. Finish the railtrail.org. This has a nascent website. We'll be beefing it up. But we're going to get all the communities along the way to echo in that they're in support of this trail. We love our trail. There's a couple of places not yet built out or even not even passed about it because they're, various reasons, but we can reassemble this. There will be money to build these big iconic bridges. So more questions? Anybody on this wall? Any questions?
One of the concerns that I've heard a lot about, especially from the town administration, is long-term maintenance. How do towns usually handle that?
Well, lots of times it's a volunteer organization. If it's a soft surface trail and it's a rural place, sort of like this, I mean, Wachusett Greenways is a great example. Building a friends group that is robust and not just coming to meetings, but to actually going out and do fun things and having tours or guided tours, led tours, or doing improvements, or maybe after a bad winter storm, knocking down trees to go and do cleanups. You can do this as a fun family activity. It doesn't have to be done by the government, the municipal government. It's if you build a robust friends group, you can take care of this with very little or no municipal money. If your town has Berlin passed the CPA here? Yep. Yay, thank you. You can fund maintenance projects through the CPA. And it won't be a lot, soft surface trails, not a lot of money. It becomes a community building exercise too. And, it'll be good. It'll be good.
Excellent. Let me open it up. Are there any questions for anybody who's attending online? see any hands. Don't see any hands. Does any, and so if there's no further questions, I guess we can wrap it up. Thank you very much, Craig, for coming. We may,
You made my year.
I'm so, and it's so only the
I
17th.
know, it's gonna be a great year. If I'm in Berlin in January, it's gonna be a great year. Thank you.
And we, Kyle had to leave, so we should close the meeting.
May I add a couple of things at the end here? Or is it too
Sure.
late?
It-
Unforeseen issues.
Sure. Yep,
Very
yep,
brief.
Yep.
One thing I highlighted in the stewardship plan was, there's some invasives. And I've been in touch with Jane Mahoney over at SVT. And she will include me in the certification for invasive species removal
Excellent.
classes this spring. And today I went to a class on winter sowing of seeds. I've done this before, back years before I moved here. And I was able to pick up about 20 packets of native plants. We can sow anytime between now and early February. So they stratify and use them to populate our native plant garden here in town. So
Excellent.
that's all. I'm gonna.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you for being willing to become certified in invasive plant removal. That's gonna be very valuable.
I hope so.
Yep. All right. So I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second,
All those in favor?
I.
Aye.